2 hours until the aerial bombing of Undisclosed. I ducked down and banged my head on the window crank on the caddy's door. I anticipated the thunder of gunfire and the sound of lead punching holes in the Cadillac's door panels. Then I realized I may very well hear nothing at all, because John had grossly underestimated the caliber of the sentry guns. The twin barrels on that turret looked big enough to put my thumb into, ready to fire bullets that would effortlessly pierce the thin metal of the Cadillac's door panels, a microsecond later taking a nice leisurely path through my squishy internal organs. But the guns did not fire. John screamed, "Let's go, let's go!" What? No. We got him confused. We have to get out before they get their shit together and turn us into Swiss meat. He opened his door and dragged me out. He reached into the back seat and grabbed something, the green mystery box from my tool shed. We ducked down, putting the Cadillac between us and the gun, not that there wasn't another identical gun on the other side, and ran. We hurdled the concrete barrier, and there, in front of us, were the woods. Beyond it, a convenience store bathroom that would hopefully take us away from here. Deja vu. Only there were no soldiers chasing us now. No, now there was a crowd of armed townspeople, carrying shotguns and hunting rifles and machetes, half of them running, half of them aiming their guns and drawing down on us. And unlike the National Guardsmen in those disorganized early hours of the crisis, here were people who knew what a breach in that fence meant. I risked a look back and saw the gaping hole we'd torn in the fence. Red jumpsuits were gathered on the other side, everyone gawking out at the outside world as if a hole had suddenly been ripped open in the sky. And then I saw the gathering crowd, onlookers on the other side of the fence, every one of them armed, with the same exact expression on their face. Two sides of a mirror, the same ideas drawing on both sides. The fence was broken. The sentry guns were not working. Everything had changed. Shots were fired. We plunged into the darkness of the trees. We scrambled across the muddy ditch. We emerged from the other side and ran for BB's. Assuming that BB's is even still there. It was. And this time, we didn't even care where the magical shitter door spat us out, as long as it wasn't here. If the door wasn't working, if this network of interdimensional wormholes or whatever they were had been shut down by the shadowy fuckers in charge of all of this, then we were dead. We would be torn apart by the mob. We tumbled into the bathroom and pulled the door closed. A gunshot punched a hole in the door right as the door did its thing, and then we were tumbling. It was a baffling sensation. The whole world turned like we were on an amusement park ride. I fell on top of John, both of us suddenly flat on our backs. The door that had been in front of us was now on top of us. We were looking up at it. I got a leg untangled from John and kicked the door. I was looking up at an overcast sky. I pulled myself out and realized I was emerging from the ground, like a vampire rising from his coffin after sundown. Boards and bricks and broken glass covered the grass around me. I climbed out, and looming above me was the old Firth Asylum. There was a huge hole in the wall, the debris of which was scattered all around me. We had teleported less than half a mile away. We were alone for the moment, but we could hear the shouts of the mob down the street. I tumbled out onto the wreckage and John emerged behind me. He stared down at the hole we had come from, confused, and then closed the door I had thrown open. I saw that the door and its frame were in fact laying loose on the ground, flung aside when the blast destroyed the wall. When John picked up the door again, underneath was just dead grass. John said, "Shit, I left my shotgun shells back at the caddy." I took a breath and said, "Look, you remember when we watched Star Wars with Amy? And she's like, why is Princess Leia being such a bitch when those guys just rescued her?" Well, I don't want to be the Leia in this situation, and I completely appreciate what a sweet ramp job that was back there. But did you have any kind of plan at all? I'm working on it. Because time is running out here. John was looking up at the old building, staring hard at the mossy brick walls. I said, "What?" "I took some soy sauce earlier." "You did?" "Yeah. And I came by here." "Okay. And there were shadows here." I followed his gaze. The row of windows in the moldy brick were boarded over with ancient warped plywood. It kind of made it seem like the building had cataracts. I saw no shadow people. I said, "Do you see any now?" "No." He turned and saw something else, though, and said, "Here," handing me the green mystery box. He jogged away from me, heading for the corner of the building. I spotted the ass of an RV parked there. I followed him. Faint shouts from the armed mob were growing louder. "John, what are you—" My words died at the sight of blood-stained grass surrounding the loose earth of a huge, freshly filled-in hole, like a mass grave. John pulled out his ridiculous customized shotgun. He had it wedged down in the back of his pants and ducked into the RV. The windshield was busted out. When I followed John through the driver's side door, I saw the tan upholstery of the driver's seat was one big blood stain. Christ. Leading with the shotgun, John quickly searched the inside. There were rows of hooks on the opposite wall that it took me a moment to realize were gun racks, all of which were now empty. John started throwing open footlockers and found them stocked with at least 4 different types of ammunition. "Bingo," he said, stuffing his pockets with shotgun shells. "See? Things have a way of working out. We needed shells, and here they are." I looked around. On the floor was a busted laptop computer. At the very back, the floor was damp and it smelled like piss. There didn't seem to be anything of use here other than bullets. I froze. Oh, no. Oh, fuck, no. No, no, no. John joined me and said, "What? I think these were—" But his words trailed off. He saw what I saw. 2 objects that a man in denial could have dismissed as meaningless. A mostly empty tub of red licorice and an orthopedic pillow designed for people with back problems. Amy. It really only told me what I already knew. She'd come for me, because that's who she was. And she'd find a way in, because she was too capable not to. John glanced nervously out of a side window. The mob would wash in at any moment. He was saying, "Okay, we don't know this was hers. And even if it was, we do know that isn't her blood in the driver's seat. Amy can't drive." But I was already jumping out of the RV. Outside, I immediately saw another, smaller blood stain. This one in the grass in front of an open basement window. Laying in it was a single empty shoe. A man's. I said, "Amy got somebody to give her a ride in. So they pulled up. Something nasty came flying out of that window down there. And they killed the shit out of it." Look, next to the window. Spent shotgun shell. Maybe it got the driver first, then the rest of the posse in the RV, and Amy if she was with them. They bail out and go inside. Probably in there right now. Then a hobo came along and pissed in the RV. Dave, why would they... Ignoring him, I leaned my head down toward the basement window and said, Amy? Hey, Amy, it's Dave. Nothing. Anybody? Is there anybody in there? A shot was fired. A bullet took a chip out of the wall. We ducked and John grabbed my sleeve, yanking me around the corner toward the front door. Neither one of us had to debate the merits of getting down and crawling through that basement window. That violated 2 rules of living in undisclosed. 1, never put yourself in a spot where you don't have an open and fast means of escape. And 2, don't go through any entrance that has a huge goddamn bloodstain in front of it. We reached the front door and John said, Plug your ears. He pointed the shotgun at the locks on the front door and blew a grapefruit-sized hole in the wood. We pushed our way inside. 105 minutes until the aerial bombing of Undisclosed. It appeared the feds left behind anything that would take more than 5 minutes to load onto a truck. Boxes of medical supplies and biohazard suits and filters for biohazard suits and every other thing lined in the main hallway, abandoned in the evacuation. Halogen work lamps were set up on stands here and there, a few of them still on, blasting bluish beams through the shadows of the huge corpse of a building. We pushed the front door closed and dragged a huge metal cabinet in front of it. Out of breath, I said, We could have relocked that door, but somebody blew a hole in it. I'm sorry, Princess. And by the way, those shotgun shells in the RV, they weren't there waiting for us because a guardian angel dropped them from the sky because you needed help. They were there because somebody else, somebody who believed in being prepared, paid for them with their own money. Keep that in mind the next time you get yourself in a bind and somebody is there for you with bail money or a sofa to sleep on. It isn't providence. It's generous people who work hard jobs to buy things you can take. We were jogging down a main hallway now, heading deeper into the building. John said, Search one of those crates. See if you can find some fucking antidepressants. All right. Seriously, it's an emergency. I'll cram them down the barrel of a gun and blow them right into your brain. We moved in silence for a moment, and I said, How did we screw this all up so badly, John? He shook his head. We always find a way. We had to stop to climb over a knocked-over pile of plastic storage bins in the hall. I said, Damn, the feds left in a hurry. They got overrun by infected? Not exactly. I told you Falconer had to spring me out of here. We had to blow a huge hole in the wall to do it. They had us in like a big gymnasium and we saw a couple of liquid oxygen tanks along the wall and we're like, let's blow that shit up and get the hell out of here. It worked, but I guess in the confusion, a bunch of the infected they were holding here got loose and they decided to just leave town and let the situation sort itself out. Wait, you're the reason the feds abandoned ship? Jesus, John. Well, I feel like it's their fault for trying to hold me. They should have known that shit comes with consequences. John clicked 3 shells into his ridiculous tri-barreled shotgun, glancing nervously back toward the front doors. Nobody came crashing through. Wait, was the armed, angry mob scared to come in here? That couldn't be a good fucking sign. Amy, anybody? Echoes bounced off moldy walls. The building seemed 5 times bigger on the inside. It had the tangled floor plan common to all hospitals, seemingly designed by someone who believed in the healing power of watching confused visitors aimlessly wander around the hallways. It didn't help that all signage in the place had faded, or been stolen, or painted over with graffiti. We came to a T in the hall. I said, "Which way?" "When I was here earlier, Hey!" John took off running to his right. I followed, the heavy green mystery box banging off my legs as I ran. I considered dropping the stupid thing. "What? What did you see? John!" We skidded to a stop at the end of the hall. "I saw somebody." "Was it a person?" He shook his head in a way that meant he didn't know. "Are you sure you saw them?" "Is that an elevator?" It was. Down at the end of the hall. The doors were closed. "Probably no power to it, though, right?" I said, "I think you might be wrong. I rode in it. They had me down in the basement for a while." "They did? You didn't tell me that. What's down there?" "Surely nothing worth complaining about, or else you would have brought it up by now." "Don't know. They had me knocked out the whole time and then put a bag on my head when they hauled me out to go to quarantine. I don't want to shake your faith in government, but I'm thinking this Reaper is kind of a shady operation." "Find the stairs." There was no need to debate getting on the elevator, thanks to rule number 1 I mentioned just a moment ago. You get on one of those things, and you're sealed up and somebody else is controlling where you go. All of these rules were learned from terrible experiences. John said, "Boom, stairs, right over there." We jogged toward the stairwell door, and at the exact moment John's hand grabbed the handle, the elevator dinged behind us. We heard the doors slide open. From behind us, a tiny voice said, "Wait." 90 minutes until the aerial bombing of Undisclosed. I very nearly pissed my pants. John saw the look on my face and spun around with the shotgun. He led the way, and we inched toward the now open elevator. Inside was a little girl. Long, black, straight hair. She wore a filthy nightgown. John said, "Holy shit, what are you doing here?" I said, "John, back up." The little girl looked at me and said, "Don't be scared." "Anna?" She nodded. John said, "You know her?" "Don't lower the gun, John." "Do you want to hold it? I'm not pointing a shotgun at a toddler." Anna said, "Why are there so many holes on that gun?" I said, "What do you want?" "I can take you to see Amy." "Is she here?" Anna nodded silently. John and I exchanged a look. Quietly, he said, "Okay, I gotta admit, she's pretty creepy." I whispered, "Man, if this was a horror movie, the audience would be screaming for us to get the fuck out of here." "Well, they'd be thinking it. They wouldn't scream it unless they were black." "She's downstairs," interrupted Anna. "Your dog is here too. Get in." John said, No. If we go down, we take the stairs." Anna shook her head. "There are no lights in the stairs. We should stay away from the dark." I swallowed and said, "Because the Shadow Man." She nodded. John whispered, "Jesus Christ." To John, I said, "I'm going to leave it up to you." He clearly had no idea. This was so obviously a trap. And we so obviously had nowhere else to go. John asked Anna, "Where is she? What floor?" "The second basement. Mr. Bear is down there keeping a lookout." "Okay, and is Mr. Bear, It's a stuffed bear," I said, answering for her. "Right," John said to me. "We do it this way. You wait here for 2 minutes. I'm taking the stairs. If there is something waiting for us, I'll find out how it likes buckshot. Then you head down on the elevator and I'll meet you there. Then if she, attacks you, you only have to last for 2 floors against a toddler." Anna said, "I think we should all ride together." John was already heading to the stairs. I took a breath, steeled myself, and stepped into the elevator with Anna. I hovered my finger over the B2 button and counted to 100. I braced myself for the sound of shotgun blasts, or screams, or anything. Nothing. I hit the button. The door closed. Anna stood to my left, motionless, looking forward the way people do on elevators. The elevator rumbled and we were heading down and down. A tiny, soft, warm hand curled around mine. I looked down at Anna, and she smiled at me. We jolted to a stop. The light went off. The little fingers squeezed around mine. I slapped at the door and yelled, "John, hey!" No answer. Anna's hand squeezed tighter. Strong. Too strong. I punched buttons on the panel. Nothing. I kicked at the door. I tried to pull my hand away from Anna's grip, and I couldn't. The fingers changed. I felt them melt under my grip, fusing together, becoming something like a snake or a tentacle. The light blinked on. I wheeled on Anna, and she was just a little girl with little girl hands. She said, "The lights do that sometimes." I stared hard at her. Her eyes were the picture of innocence. The door opened, and John was there aiming a shotgun at my face. I said, "Don't shoot. The light went off. We all clear here?" "Yeah." Anna led the way out of the elevator, stopping to pick up a teddy bear that looked like it had been bought and sold in 3 different garage sales over 20 years. She clutched it and headed down the hall. I recognized the corridor and the rust-pitted steel doors and the smell of shit. I followed Anna, and John followed me. He had the shotgun by his ear, aimed at the ceiling, trying to look in every direction at once. We reached the end of the hall, and a bullet-riddled maintenance store that had been barricaded from this side. Metal bars laid over it with fresh welds locking them in place. There were empty bags of cement and masonry tools scattered around the hall, and I wondered if on the other side of that door I would find a steam tunnel sealed with fresh brick and concrete. Anna turned left, down another hall. Then it was through a doorway marked Annex, which opened to an impossibly long hallway that seemed too long for the building. We headed down, our footsteps echoing endlessly in both directions. The walls were covered with a faded mural depicting huge, smiling faces that may have been clowns or mimes. Time and moisture had peeled the paint in patches, so that huge swathes of the colorful landscape were corroded and eaten away, the smiling inhabitants unaware that the very fabric of their world was crumbling. Graffiti artists had painted signatures and anarchy signs and cocks. Along the wall to my left, in huge letters, was the phrase, "The end is not near. It has already happened. We just didn't care." Anna looked back at me and smiled. Invisible ants raced up my back. I glanced back at John and saw on his face that he had already realized that what was up there, whatever it was not Amy. What was up there was bad news, and it was only a matter of how we would deal with it. We were not in control of the situation. We were never in control. The last of the working emergency lights was only halfway down the hall, and the light faded long before we reached the end. Our own echoes followed us down and down into the darkness. Anna slowed down, and I once again felt the tiny, warm hand in mine. We walked together, and at the end of the dark hall, I could see a closed door with light pouring from the bottom. Just like people described in near-death experiences. The long passage with a door of light at the end. "Amy is in there," whispered Anna. And in that moment, I decided that this was probably right, but not in a literal way. Whatever was waiting behind that door was almost certainly the quickest way to see Amy, or at least to join her, if there is no such thing as seeing in that place. We reached the door. Anna let go of my hand and said, "It's locked. Only she can open it. Call for her." I said, "Amy?" but thought it was too soft for even Anna to hear. I cleared my throat and said it louder. In that moment, I realized I was smelling something. A scent totally out of place in this rotting, forgotten building. A scent I had smelled 100 times before. One that was sparking memories that triggered a wave of sadness. I heard the latch turning on the door. "70 minutes until the aerial bombing of Undisclosed." The smell was microwave popcorn. The door opened and there was Amy, her handless left arm curled around said bag of popcorn. Her eyes got huge behind her glasses, and then her arms were around me, and we were crushing a popcorn bag between us. She was sobbing and pressing her face into my chest so hard her glasses had gone askew. I squeezed her and ran my hand through her hair and whispered to her that it was all right. That everything was all right. I have no idea how long we stood there like that, or how long John and Anna stood there and waited. All I could think was how much I wished, for the second time, we could just freeze a moment and run credits over it. John said, "Sorry that took so long. I had to ramp something." Amy pulled away and wiped her eyes and said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what I just did. I got hungry and I used a microwave to make this, and it tripped a breaker that I guess runs out to the generator. And if the computers had been on that same breaker, we would have lost everything." She gathered herself and said to John, "I never doubted you." John said, "Now there's a lie, but I don't blame you." I said. Shit. I'm still doubting him. Amy looked down at Anna and said, "You and Mr. Bear did good. We're all here. Even Molly's here." She was, curled up on the floor under a desk. Holy shit, did that dog get around. How did she... I was talking to Amy's back. She was scurrying across the room to a desk where she had set up no fewer than 5 computer monitors and 3 keyboards. There was a box of donuts and a pot of coffee going. It looked like she had been working there for a week. Amy said, "Okay, this setup looks ridiculous, but I finally figured out they had different parts of the security set up on different workstations, and there was no way to monitor them all without running back and forth across the room. I had to crawl around and reroute network cables, and anyway, all of the security robots around the quarantine are offline. They're in maintenance mode, and as far as I know, they can't be reset remotely. So that should be taken care of. The UAVs, the drone things, I think they're okay. It'd take a long time to explain, but I emailed a guy and got that taken care of. All of that is the good news. The bad news is... The good news is that I know how they're blocking the cell phone signals. It's not done through the provider level or anything. They have a jammer somewhere, probably outside of city limits. It's a big thing called a Warlock jammer, a TRJ-89. It sits on the back of a truck. The bad news is that it can't be shut down from here. There's an actual crew manning it. That's why I think it's outside of town, because Reaper pulled all their staff out beyond city limits. But they're still manning the jammer because it's really, really important that nobody in town be able to call out until they drop the bombs." Amy stuffed a handful of popcorn in her mouth. I said, "Right. They're going to bomb the quarantine at noon." She shook her head so hard that her hair went slapping around her cheeks. Around a mouthful of chewed popcorn, she said, They're going to bomb the whole town." 1 hour until the aerial bombing of Undisclosed. John said, "Even that Cuban sandwich place?" She nodded. "An hour from now." I said, "Bullshit, they can't get away with bombing an entire city. What are they going to do, claim an asteroid fell on it?" Amy looked surprised and said, "David, you don't understand what it's been like out there, out in the real world. Everything has been just totally cut off from the town. Everything the world knows about what's going on in Undisclosed is based 100% on what Reaper has told them. They don't have to claim it's anything. The whole country is begging them to do it. Here, look. This was 20 minutes ago." She spun around to face one of her monitors and brought up a video clip from one of the network news sites. It was a group of haggard-looking middle-aged men facing a bank of microphones. And there, among them, was my shrink, Dr. Bob Tennant. The first guy, introduced as the head of the Outbreak Task Force, spoke and confirmed that they had, in fact, been given permission by the President of the United States to use military assets to disinfect the entirety of Outbreak Ground Zero, and that this would proceed as soon as it could be confirmed that all military and Reaper personnel were clear of the area. I pointed to Tennant standing in the back and said, "You see that guy back there with the Caesar haircut? That's my therapist." "But why would he be..." "It was all part of the setup. He works for them." "Who?" "Oh, you mean capital T, them." John said, "He's talking." On the video, Tennant strode up to the microphone. His title displayed as Dr. Tennant, Consultant. Reaper. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'll be brief. You've all come to know me over these trying days, and I found myself in the unexpected position of relaying to the public the serious nature of this threat with what I hope you appreciate as frankness, honesty, and transparency, while trying to ensure that caution did not turn into panic. What I have been saying from day one continues to be just as true now, if not more so. Fear is the most contagious disease. So with that, I want to address the question a moment ago about deaths resulting from the bombardment. That is, the thermobaric disinfection of the affected area that Secretary Fernandez just explained, which will, as he said, commence at noon local time. This needs to be made perfectly clear for you here, for those watching this on the news, and for our children and grandchildren who will try to understand this act when it passes into the pages of history books. As far as we know, there is no one left alive in the city of Undisclosed. As you know, the National Guard and multiple agencies, including the CDC, FEMA, and Reaper, took decisive coordinated action to create a buffer around the city. A 5-mile band that we referred to as the Yellow Zone, but in the news media has been unfortunately redubbed as the Dead Zone. In this, we were successful, and we may never know how many lives were saved by moving rapidly and decisively to isolate the infection zone. However, efforts to stop the spread of the contagion, which has colloquially become known as the Zulu parasite, within the city itself has utterly failed. The infection rate within city limits is now at or near 100%. This operation is about the disposal and disinfection of tens of thousands of highly, highly infectious corpses. Now, I have worked very hard all week to shoot down the more outlandish rumors that have spread about the parasite, and I suspect I will spend the rest of my life doing the same. That is the nature of the contagion we call paranoia. But the situation is this. Whatever residents of Undisclosed are still walking and moving are, for all intents and purposes, effectively dead. We have explained this ad nauseum. The parasite completely breaks down and effectively rewires the victim's brain tissue. The victims retain some basic motor control and become extremely, extremely violent as the parasite continues to corrupt the central nervous system. From then, until the victim is finally rendered immobile, they are highly, highly contagious. This stage of the disease is what has unfortunately led to some of the more sensationalist rumors of zombies and the like. But I want to make it perfectly clear. These are nothing more than people who, after death, are able to remain mobile, dangerous, and infectious. John said, "Well, that should put everybody at ease." I snorted. Amy said, "I wasn't even paying attention. All I can picture is you having sex with him." John said, "What?" Tennant was still talking. Which is what makes the situation so exceptionally dangerous if we don't completely eliminate the threat using all means available to us. The sights and the sounds of this terrible but necessary process will be shocking. This is something none of us wanted to see happen in an American city. But let me make it clear now, and for all time. We are only disposing of the dead. Nothing more. Thank you. John pointed at the screen and said, "You notice they even started using a Z word to describe the parasite? Might as well have called it the zombie virus." I shook my head. Son of a bitch, Marconi was right. That panic is just going to ripple out like splashing a rock in a pond. John said, "What do we do?" I said, We get the hell out of town and find some other place to live. Man, I wonder if the insurance will pay for my house getting bombed. Amy said, David, we can't let them do this. Babe, I don't think there's a choice. They set it up so that it would be the only option. If they don't scour this town off the face of the earth, then people will never be satisfied. People will be killing each other in the streets. A new panic set off every time a normal-looking person monsters out. It's shitty that they'll get what they want, but this is kind of checkmate. They kill undisclosed or the world kills itself. John said, They. What a bunch of assholes. Anna walked up beside Amy. Can I have some of your popcorn? You can have the bag, honey. Sorry, it kind of got squished. It's okay. Damn. That was a creepy kid. To Amy, John said, You got work and email there? Can't you send a message to the New York Times or somebody, telling them what's going on? Oh, I did. I also found out that the news channels and all the big papers were getting over 100,000 messages a day from zombie cranks and apocalypse crazies and everybody else. Mine will be one more in the pile. Maybe some intern will get to it 6 months from now. Maybe it'll mean something to the town they build up on top of the ashes of this one. I said, Damn, girl. You got cynical in the last couple of weeks. She didn't smile. I read something in her face and said, Wait a second. How did you get here? Did you come in on that RV? She nodded. I came down with some guys, hipsters who thought they were going to come down and shoot zombies and have future high schools named after them. They, didn't make it, did they? She shook her head. Jesus, Amy. Nobody else made it? She shook her head again. I went to her and hugged her again. How the hell did you get away? She couldn't answer. Instead, she pulled away and said, It really is perfect the way they set this up. It brought everybody's worst fears out of the woodwork, and every little thing the government said made it just a little bit worse. It was all there, David, under the surface. They just came along and pricked everybody's balloon. I said, Well, it doesn't change anything. Our mission is to get the hell out of here. Then, if, they drop the bombs, that sucks. But all we can do is tell the world what we know. Amy stood up and brushed a dozen pieces of dropped popcorn off her lap. She said, What are we waiting for? I gestured toward Anna and said, What do we do with her? We don't have time to find... Where did she go? John was looking around the room. I said, She was right here. The lights went out. Damn it, I knew she was a monster. John, Amy, listen. Guard your buttholes. I heard John knocking objects off a nearby table, blindly grabbing for his shotgun. From the pitch blackness, Amy said, Calm down, it's probably just the generator. It probably just ran out of gas. She shouted, Anna, honey? Are you okay? I heard the click of a door lock. Molly started barking. Somebody's leaving. Who's leaving? I heard the door. John said. I got the shotgun. Somebody look for a flashlight. Anna, are you in here? It's okay, honey. Don't be afraid. I said. That's right, little girl. Everything's fine. Come, get in front of John's shotgun. Something long and slim and warm slid into my palm. It had bumpy ridges like an earthworm. It slipped through my hand and around my wrist and forearm. I yelled and yanked my hand away, but the Anna thing, in its true form, held fast. It slithered around my elbow and came to rest under my armpit. Then another tentacle was wrapping around my knee. I made panicked, cursing noises and stumbled backward. Dave, hey, where are you? I went to the floor. There was a crash in the darkness. Presumably John tripping over a chair while blindly flailing to my rescue. Amy screamed. David! It's got me! She's got me! I kicked and thrashed, and the bundle of flexing tentacles slipped around my abdomen, and then around my neck. I threw myself to my feet and tried to find a wall to slam into, to crush it. I wound up flinging myself through thin air, tripping over a box. The monster was shrieking in my ear. I pulled at the limb around my neck, but it was strong. So fucking strong. Everybody was yelling, but I could hear nothing over the screeching that was turning into an ice pick in my ear. Then there was a crash from the room next to us. Metal and glass like something big and heavy had been knocked over. Amy screamed. Molly barked. I got to my feet once more, wearing the Anna monster like a writhing backpack. I found a wall and slammed backward into it. It didn't budge. Somebody was screaming my name. I heard a door burst open. Anna! This was a new voice. A man's voice. A blast of light flooded the room. Everyone froze. Standing in the doorway was a Latino guy who I thought looked like Mark Anthony. I knew I had seen him before, but in my state of panic, couldn't place where. He was holding a huge flashlight, and he whipped it around the room, first finding Amy, who was still standing next to the dead computer and squinting at the sudden brightness. Then he spotlighted John, who was pointing his shotgun right at my face. Then the light found me, and I felt the tentacle loosen from around my neck. The Anna thing slithered to the floor, and in the harsh shadows of the beam, I saw a filthy nightgown tangled around a nightmare wad of tentacles that looked like they were made of knotted clumps of black hair. Somewhere in the center of it was a pair of eyes on either side of a sideways mouth and clicking mandibles. The man with the flashlight said, Anna, are you okay? The tentacles started twisting and bundling together, fusing and melting and reforming. In a few seconds, there was the little girl again. She straightened her nightgown and sniffled and started crying. The man said again, Are you okay? Anna shook her head. No, you're all right. In the shadows, I could see John looking back and forth between me, the guy, and Anna. He was still pointing the shotgun at me, he realized, and he pointed it at the floor instead. To me, the guy said, Are you all right? You're David, right? She turned into a thing. I know that. Did she hurt you? The lights went off and she got me around the neck. Did she hurt you? No. Anna sobbed and said. He hurt me, the guy said. Now, Anna, you scared him. You turned and you scared him. I didn't mean to. The lights went out and I couldn't help it. Anna, you need to say you're sorry to David. Anna did not agree with this. Anna, she defiantly said. I'm sorry. To me, he said, do you accept her apology? As heartfelt as it clearly was not. I had no words. She turned into a thing. Anna started crying in earnest once more. Amy said, Hey, David. I turned, and out of the darkness, an object came hurtling toward me. I flinched, threw up my hands, and squealed. A filthy, stuffed bear bounced off my gut. I found it on the floor, handling it like I was passing a piece of meat into a tiger cage. I kneeled and extended the bear toward Anna. She flung herself toward me, utilizing her preternatural little girl speed. I had no time to react. She flew at me and threw her arms around my neck. She pressed her wet face against mine and hugged me. She said, I'm sorry I scared you, Walt. It's okay. I put an arm around her, and for the 10th time in a week, felt like I had become numb to the ridiculous. Anna pried herself away from me, plucked Mr. Bear from my hands, and navigated her way through the wrecked room over to the flashlight man. He kneeled down to catch her and gave her a kiss on the forehead. I said, I don't understand. Is she... This is my daughter, Anna. She's 8 years old. And you are? I'm Carlos. 50 minutes until the aerial bombing of Undisclosed. John, reading the expression on my face, said, You two know each other? Carlos answered for me, saying, We were over in quarantine together. I said, And you're like her, right? No, not like her. What I mean is, she's not like me. She won't hurt you. She hasn't hurt anybody. Not like me. So you are the one who, not in front of her, but yes. But you want us to believe that we're safe. From you, I mean. There is a lot about this situation that you do not understand. In quarantine, they were using you to sort the infected from the uninfected, right? But you can't really do it, not like I can. Me, I can see them, as easy as telling man from woman. I can see it at a glance. All right, but I don't There isn't time. Let me just say that I can tell you what I know, but you don't want to know it. About who is and isn't infected, I mean. And when I say you don't want to know, I'm not trying to up the suspense. I'm saying that you don't want to know. It won't make doing what you need to do any easier. It won't make it easier for you to live in the world. I started to ask a question, but stopped myself. I tried to absorb what he was saying. Finally, I said, Dr. Marconi, he hinted to me that they're maybe more infected than everybody thinks. Let's say he's right. Let's say he's really, really right. Now, we got to ask ourselves what that word means. Infected. Infected like me? Or like my Anna here? I had no answer. I tried to weigh the implications of this and couldn't begin to. Molly had joined Anna, and the little girl was scratching her behind the ears. Or infected like Bob Tennant. You mean he's something else altogether. When I look at him, you know what I see? A black cloud. I don't even see a man. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's not a man. And maybe neither am I, and maybe that doesn't mean anything anymore. But I'm gonna say this to you, David, and to your friends here. Tennant is more dangerous than a million of me. He and the people he works for, they figured out how to use a signal, inaudible sound waves, to affect people like me. Turn us, make us lose control. I'm telling you, when left to myself, I can control it. The parasite, it whispers in my ear, but I can overcome it. You just got to have the will to put that cockroach in its place. I said, so we're supposed to just turn our backs on you and walk out, knowing all of the people who are, I glanced down at Anna, who are gone because of you. I'm supposed to just let that go? And you're going to just, what, go back to work next week? Everything back the way it was? I'm all she's got. Her mother is gone. And she has to deal with her condition on top of that. Well, she's going to have a life. The life a little girl should have. And she's going to learn how to live with this. Who else is going to teach her? Who else will understand? He nodded at John and said, so what? You want your friend to shoot me with a sawed-off 5-barrel shotgun? And then Anna either gets rounded up by the government and dissected in a laboratory or torn to pieces by that mob out there. No, you won't do that to her. I know you won't. I groaned and rubbed my forehead. John said, okay, can somebody quickly just summarize for the shotgun department who it's okay and not okay to shoot? Carlos said, the world doesn't make it that simple for us, friend. I said, yeah, if somebody tries to make a video game based on this situation, I'm telling you right now, I'm not fucking buying it. Carlos stood and took Anna's hand into his own. I said, and I still don't, I didn't think children could get infected. Dummy, she's not infected like the rest. She's been this way for years. This isn't new. How can you, of all people, not know that? I guess John said. Well, I'm lost. I said, Marconi. He had infected patients he was studying, but he had this theory that some of them would literally never turn, that the parasite could just live there. John said, so what, we just accept that? These invisible bugs multiplying inside people and we can just shrug and move on? Knowing that any day any random person can just murder the shit out of a room full of people? Carlos just shrugged and said, that's been the situation for longer than you know. Way longer. And you need to ask yourself, are you even sure all of you are uninfected? Amy said, we're sure. Are you? Your man there, he spent a lot of time in town in quarantine. in the basement of this place. He can't even account for his own whereabouts for the last week or so. You 100% sure he came out all of that clean? John shrugged and said, "Eh, he wasn't all that clean before. No offense, Dave." "Fuck you, John." To Amy, Carlos said, "I'm not joking, you know." "How would you truly know?" I said. "She knows what I am." "But if you were infected, you would deny it." "Carlos, she knows what I am." Silence. Then he nodded and said, "All right then. Now are you going to let my Anna and all the rest like her get burned up in the hellfire they rained down on this place?" Amy said, "We have to stop the bombs." I rubbed my eyes and sighed. How can that possibly be our responsibility? John said, "There's a way. Everything Tenet said in his press conference is bullshit. The streets out there aren't full of shambling hordes. They're full of all-American types carrying hunting rifles and protecting women and children. The reason Tenet had to lie is because he knew he'd never sell the public on those people being zombies. We just got to show him." I said, "And then when those all-American Joes get out and some of them fucking turn into monsters, what happens then?" Amy said, "Then we will once again err on the side of not letting people be murdered. You take the choice in front of you, and then you keep picking the non-murder choice as long as you can." I said, "And that is why I wanted you to stay home." John said, "We have to shut down their cell phone jammer. 20,000 cell phones and cameras and internet connections will suddenly blink to life. Then people can call and email and upload videos, and that'll be that. The lid will be off their whole charade." It took me a moment to figure out what John had said because he pronounced it charade. Amy said, "Then the president will realize he can't bomb the town without losing a bunch of votes next election." I said, "Setting aside the fact that we now have less than an hour to accomplish this and that we'll be gunned down the moment we set foot outside this building, do you have any way to find out where the jammer even is?" "Well, I think there's only one place it can be. It needs line of sight, right?" "Okay." "So it needs to be someplace high. The highest point they can get it." "Where's that?" "Well, it'd be somewhere around the water tower, right? For the same reason." "The water tower needs line of sight?" "It needs to be at the highest point." "Oh." "Because the gravity pushes the water down, and that's what makes the water come out of your faucet." "Yeah, right. I absolutely knew that before right now." John said, "Shit, we saw it. That big-ass black semi they had parked out there. They had it in place the first day. So fine. Let's go fuck that shit up." To Carlos, Amy said, "Can you lead us out of here? We don't have a flashlight."